Hola chicos y chicas, ¿cómo estáis? This is the introduction to the playlist Pasos 1. Now, the purpose of this video is to explain to students, new students and current students, why I use this book. Um, I like it for a number of reasons. Um, One reason is that this was a bestseller at one point. Um, Another reason why I use this book is because it has authentic recordings. And let me talk about what I mean by that. When it comes to audio for the books, the majority of authors will use professional voice actors, and that is wonderful. But it's always good to have some authentic recordings. They have different functions. Now, the professional voice actors are needed when you really need to learn the precise pronunciation of a word or a phoneme. I don't know. Is if it's the T in Spanish, you need to know that it's pronounced between the T, so it's the, dia, dia. It's good. Um, the teacher also does that, of course. But I always, and I feel very passionate about this, I always talk about the need to have real people, real voices with real accents. And this book has that, as well as professional actors, of course. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to go through the index of the book. And there is something really that most books will have. You might have a new book published, in 2026, January 2026. But the language hasn't changed that much. And the way we teach doesn't change that much. So the different methods and different approaches, of course, um, having taught for so many years, let me tell you where I am now. I am now, I've come to the conclusion that probably the communicative approach that is not that new is the best. So the aim of the course and the lesson is to enable students to communicate effectively. Sometimes there'll be mistakes. It doesn't matter. As long as the message gets across, as long as you make yourself understood. Let me just look at this. It's a beautiful book, really. Sometimes we just look at books and we don't care about the index, the contents page. But let's see, for example, let's go to the very beginning. But they call it Lección 1 or Lesson 1, but really, it's not Lesson 1. In practical terms, something like Chapter 1. And in Chapter 1, Pasos 1 is going to teach about introductions. So, how to introduce yourself, things like Hola, me llamo Jorge, soy, meeting people, socializing, talking about yourself, countries and nationalities, jobs, family. So that is what you're going to learn. The grammar is always sort of underneath, and that is the way I want to teach it because, as I said before, if the point of the lesson is to learn to communicate, we need to make it real. We need to make it go straight to what it should be the aim of your language learning process, journey, if you want to call it that, which is to link your thoughts, your emotions to the expression, and in this case, language. Sometimes we get too bogged down on grammar and start arguing about grammar. But grammar is a tool, grammar is important. And of course, a book should have listed the grammar. And in this case, the grammar for Unit 1 or Chapter 1 is masculine, feminine forms of nouns, okay, possessive adjectives, present tense, ser, tener, llamarse, etc. So again, I'm going to rely on my experience. I use it to back me up. I've been teaching now for 40 years. I started when I was 20 and now I am 60. So let me share with you what my experience informs me, and my experience informs me that even though grammar is important, many people, native speakers, don't really know about the grammar. They don't have these words at hand. So if I was teaching, and I was teaching last week in here in Blackpool, and I thought that what is the point of talking about direct object, indirect object, if it's not clear in the mind of my students what I'm talking about? Why don't you just say, but this is that, something like, and there's an exercise that I like, and it's called Pásamela, and it goes like, Pásame la naranja, por favor. And the other person will say, aquí la tienes, and so on. So without talking about direct object, I am already using it in practical terms as it happens in the real world. In the real world, apart from the lessons, grammar lessons, we don't really talk about direct object, indirect object, we just know. So that is something I've learned, something that I still believe in. I mean, I'm not planning on retiring very soon. I'm not saying that in 7 years' time, at the age of 67, I might come back and say, I'll tell you what, I found that I wasn't right. So at the moment, today, and the date in español is lunes 2 de febrero de 2026. That is the 2nd of January 2026, and it's a Monday. Those are my beliefs, backed by my experience. Will it change in the future? You never know. So, and that is all I'm going to say for now. Actually, before I forget, of course, the other thing I want to say is most books follow the same structure. Most books will start like this with personal information. Unit 2 will be food and drink. Then will be directions. Um, then we have, in this case, number 4, unit 4 is hotel accommodation. Unit 5 is what you do. Now, when unit 5, it's when we really need the grammar. As I said, I've said today that grammar is important, but not that important. Communication is important. That is still true. But when it comes to unit 5, we need to do a bit of conjugation, and that has to be taught, because if we think about English, we have two ways of, we don't even talk about conjugations in English because there's no need. So if you think of the verb, I don't know, talk, we have I talk, you talk, he talks, she talks. So basically we have two forms, talk and talks. That's it. In Spanish will be 6. Hablar. Be hablo, habla. So in this particular case, and unit 5 has been always a defining moment for students. It's interesting when you buy this book, just Pasos one. Most of them second-hand this year, it's a long book. Um, Most of them stop at unit 5 because unit 5 comes with the idea of conjugating a verb. The ones who did Latin will talk about declinations and so on. And this is where I need to make the exception and almost contradict what I've just said before, because we need to spend some time. Equally, it doesn't have to be boring. I normally teach with stories. So that's where I'm at. And this is the introduction to this wonderful book. There are many wonderful books around, of course, but this is the one I like. Now, if you come to me for private lessons, I will ask you to buy this book. It's not expensive. It's about, you won't pay more than a fiver, £5. And that's including delivery. Um, but for me, you see, I'm using this book. I've used other books as well. I sometimes I use a book called Sige as well. listos. The important thing is that you have something like this, something physical. The internet is fantastic, of course. There's videos and there is things, and there are videos that don't say that. That's all fine. But I'm sticking to what I know. I'm sticking to almost, in a way, it might even sound old-fashioned, but that's where I am. And that is where my expertise comes from. I'm going to leave the TikTokers, the fancy stuff to the younger people. I don't say young, I say younger, más jóvenes. Um, but as I said, we can work together. So this is just really who am I making this video for? Primarily for my students, so they know. And for anybody out there who wants to learn Spanish and cares to listen to the advice of someone who has a few years experience doing it, sois bienvenidos, you're welcome. Y eso es todo por ahora. Me despido, un fuerte abrazo desde Blackpool, en Inglaterra. Nos vemos. Adiós, adiós.